Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Psych of RPGs. As you can see, this week we're doing another deep dive into a specific game rather than a broad psychological topic and applying it to RPGs generally. This week we're talking about Anyone Can Wear the Mask. And the subtitle of this is What's in It for Me? And we're going to be talking a lot about this concept of helping people. But what is Anyone Can Wear the Mask? Anyone Can Wear the Mask is a new RPG. It came out pretty recently by Jeff Stormer. Jeff Stormer's name hopefully is familiar to you. He runs the podcast Party of One, which is this just absolutely fantastic podcast that if you haven't listened to it yet, you definitely should. Jeff sits down with a guest. They play a role-playing game together with two players. So either usually like a GM-less sort of system or a system that works well with a single GM and one player, or in the case of Anyone Can Wear the Mask, one of those sort of collaborative storytelling games. And this game in particular, if the name hasn't given it away, is about superheroes. It's 1 to 3 players, so you could play this solo if you wanted as a sort of journaling game that are going to take on 3 distinct roles. One is the hero, one is the villain, and then the last person is the city itself, embodying sort of everybody inside of it. And through the course of play, there's a little bit of dice rolling. There's some you use a deck of cards. You sort of tell this story of the rise and fall and eventual rise again of a superhero dealing with some sort of threat from the villain. So it's a sort of classic superhero game, but mostly focused on sort of storytelling rather than, you know, thinking about how different superheroes would have different powers, and in a combat like a really crunchy sort of system. It's a comic book in an RPG. And the title page has a great quote, but I took a snippet of it that I think is really, really important because I think it's essential to sort of what Jeff was going for with this game. And it's essential to what we're going to be talking about today. So there is no superpowered hero coming to save us. We only have our city. We only have ourselves. We must be our own heroes. This story is an imaginary story, but it doesn't have to be. That's a really powerful and interesting quote, right? You know, we're going to be telling a story. Yes, it's a story about heroes with powers and things like that. And that doesn't necessarily exist in our world, but people who are heroes, who we consider heroes, who go out and help people, that is real. And this doesn't have to be a mythological concept. We can have this as be like an everyday thing. We have ourselves, we have each other. That's where this game gets its name, right? Anyone can wear the mask. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that right now, a lot of people love superheroes, right? You know, you have obviously the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have, you know, old graphic novels that are sort of being rebooted in new, interesting ways, like the Watchmen TV series that was on HBO recently. That was fantastic, in my personal opinion. Obviously, we all sort of love superheroes right now. And I think especially Jeff loves superheroes. You can tell that Jeff loves superheroes just by reading this game. And I think that this game, like I said earlier, is sort of a comic book in an RPG, and the way that it's told, because it is given, you get enough structure from this game to tell a really interesting story. Obviously, it's sort of collaborative storytelling, so there's a lot of freedom involved, but there are sort of story beats that you're supposed to eventually hit, an arc that you're generally sort of following, that I think makes this game more approachable than other games where it's just like, I don't know, tell a story, figure it out. You're this character, just improv for a while. If it sounds interesting, before I go into the psych stuff, you should definitely go listen to the actual play that was recorded for the Party of One podcast. So Jeff sits down and plays his own game, and it's very entertaining. It's a great story that they tell. It's one that, you know, it ends on an interesting note that I would want to keep following. I'd want to read more issues of this comic book. So make sure you go do that. But let's talk about some psychology. I always ask my students this question when we get to the social psychology chapter, which is, why do you help people? Right? People, I first start by asking, who has helped somebody? And I really hope that everybody in my class raises their hand, and they do. But then I ask, why? Why do people help one another? This is a game about superheroes, and superheroes help people, right? They help individual people, they help cities, they help the world, the galaxy, depending on the scale. Why? Why do they do it? But also, why do you and I help people? Generally, when I ask people this question, these are the sorts of answers that I get. People, they needed help, some sort of owing system. Either they owed me something, and so it's sort of an exchange of favors of who owes who. Getting paid certainly is a reason for helping people. Then there's also just kind of the concept of it just seemed like the right thing to do, or nobody else was doing it. And then sometimes we simply don't know why. Well, I don't know why I help somebody. Or I guess many people would just respond by saying, why wouldn't you help somebody? The list really goes on, but these are some of the more popular answers that I would get from my students on why people help. So there's obviously lots and lots of reasons why we help people. A lot of that stuff you could probably already start to see fit in certain categories, like the idea of owing or being paid or getting favors in the future has a sort of economic feel to it, an exchange concept to it. Others did it because a sense of like duty, like it was necessary to do it. And then others just sort of have no idea why they're doing it. So we can start to categorize these things. We like to categorize things, right? We like having boxes that we can put things inside of. So we're going to talk about three categories, or should I say three theories of why we help people. These theories come from social psychology. So social psychology, that's a tongue twister right there, is the study of psychology of groups of people. Or the second, your individualistic psychology changes when you're around somebody else. So a lot of psych stuff that I tend to focus on is on the individual. All of those rules tend to break the second you're in a group. So let's talk about what social psychologists have to say about helping. One of the theories is called the social exchange theory, and it truly is just about costs and gains. You're weighing constantly. All right, well, how much effort is this going to require me? How much time? How much energy? You know, do I want to do this? And what am I going to get out of it? The effort that I put in should be less than or equal to what I'm going to get. You don't want to put more work in and get less than that work's value. In the case of helping people. So if a friend was to ask me to help him move, for example, and he says, yeah, come over, help me, we'll pack boxes, we'll throw them in the van, we'll drive the van over to my new place, unpack the boxes, all that stuff, I'll give you $5. Me, first of all, as a friend, I would just help him. But if somebody were to come up to you and ask you to help them move, and then they describe all of that stuff, they said, I'll give you $5 for it, you might look at them with a little bit of side eye and say, is that really all my help is worth to you? Now, again, when we're talking about friends, this gets a little bit fuzzy, right? Because then you have to weigh the sort of value of your friendship or your relationship. But if we're talking about strangers, like a stranger asks me to help them move and they offer me $5 for a day's worth of, working things like that, I probably would say no. And that's because I'm just doing a bit of cost analysis in my head. This is actually not the most common way that we decide if we're going to help people. It's a very practical theory. It focuses obviously on sort of logical thinking. And that's an error that a lot of psychological theories tend to make. Certainly, a lot of economic models tend to make as well. They work under the assumption of a logical decision maker, a rational market, and things like that. And we know that those things don't tend to actually be the case. And social psychologists especially know that the human behavior gets really tricky and really sticky in group situations when you consider all the factors that are going on. So the social exchange theory gets us a little bit of understanding of why we help, but it's really not a big piece of the pie, so to speak. One of the big reasons is norms. And when I say norms, I mean the sort of unwritten rules or expectations of a people, of a culture, of a community, of a country. All of these different sort of communities that we can be a part of have norms, which are the unwritten rules. They're not laws, they're just expected behaviors. Social responsibility norm says, well, first of all, helping is important. right? Let's just set that down right away. Helping is more important than reward. So right away, we're getting rid of the idea of weighing the helping work versus the reward we're getting, because that's what the previous theory was all about, was kind of that balance between the two. This is saying right away the balance is off. Helping is more important than the reward. And our norm is that some people need help, and that those people should be the ones that we give help to. Those are the ones that we should be at least prioritizing when we give help. When I talk about this theory, I usually talk about two groups of people: children and the elderly. The children and the elderly are two groups that many cultures, many communities just tend to think these people need help, and we don't really expect a reward from them, right? So if a kid came up to me, they wanted to get something off of a high shelf, and they asked me, "Hey, Spencer, could you get this for me?" I would help that kid out. I'd give it to them, and then I wouldn't sit there with my hand outstretched waiting for the kid to pay up, right? I wouldn't do that. If you see somebody, an older individual struggling to carry some things and like open up a door, you would help them out. Again, not expecting payment in return, but because that's the sort of social responsibility. That's the norm that we as a community or as a culture have decided this is our responsibility. Helping people is important, and these people in particular are our responsibility. We are going to work together to make sure that they get the help that they need. This is a bigger piece of the pie than the social exchange theory, at least when you ask individual people why they help. A lot of people are giving reasons like this. It's these people needed help, right? I helped somebody because they were in need, rather than because I was expecting a good payment out of the whole ordeal. The last one is altruism. And when I was searching for pictures of altruism, I saw a lot of pictures of umbrellas. And it makes sense. Altruism is the furthest extreme of helping. This is the acts of without thinking, without needing or expecting any kind of reward. You just help people because you help people. It sounds similar to the thing that I just talked about. The social responsibility norms is similar sort of thing. We're not necessarily expecting rewards, but that norm theory is focusing on specific groups of people that it is our responsibility to help, while altruism is just help everybody. Help everybody just to help. Don't think about rewards. Don't think about that. That person is in need of help. I'm just going to go help them. And so why are umbrellas always the picture that show up when you Google image search this? It's because if you see somebody caught in the rain and you offer them to sit under your umbrella, a total stranger, that's an act of altruism, because again, you're not expecting any responsibility, and you're not targeting specifically people in the sort of groups that we've decided need help. It's this person seems stuck out in the rain. I'm going to go give them a hand while I can. I tend to think that people who are very altruistic are superheroes. So let's jump back to this game that we're talking about. Like I said, Jeff chose this title for a reason. Anyone can wear the mask. And that's because it's supposed to be inspirational. It could be any of us that's wearing the mask that is the hero in this game. And I think what's really important is in creating the hero, whoever's responsible for that, is the game doesn't give them a specific prompt of why they're a hero, specifically why they help. There is one little part of character creation that is how you help. And I think that's interesting. So, part of that process is, like I said, you use a deck of cards, and there are different reasons of how you help. And you can see parallels of why and how here. So, for example, if clubs is your how, then you're the hand of the people. You protect them so that you can thrive. That's how you are helpful to the city, but you can start to extrapolate from that maybe why that hero is doing it. And those theories that I just talked about, they're trying to explain the why. Why are people helping? So let's merge the game with the theory that I talked about. Which theory of the three that I talked about seems to fit what we commonly think of when we think of superheroes? Well, we'll come back to social exchange in just a second. Let's put a pin in that. Let's talk about the second two. Norms are interesting because norms change the second you talk to a different individual or move to a different community. Again, because norms are unwritten rules, essentially, unwritten guidelines, we know from reading comic books or watching superhero shows and movies that different heroes have different codes, right? They have different things that they believe in. Thus, they would also have different sort of norms. They would have different assumptions about who it is their social responsibility to protect. Yeah, we can probably be safe to assume that, again, the elderly and children are going to be part of that norm, though not necessarily. But let's expand to other groups, right? Some heroes might want to prioritize or believe it is their social responsibility to protect certain groups of people more so than others. And again, that's just because it's part of their code, oftentimes associated with their background or their origin story or something like that. But I think the third theory, altruism, seems to apply to most, I won't say all superheroes, but most superheroes have at least some degree of altruism that is pushing them forward. Some reason that they're moving forward is simply because they are helpers. They just want to help. They're not expecting a reward. They're not kind of hand choosing who they're going to help. They're going out and they are just helping the city or their neighborhood or whatever scale it is that they are working on. I think altruism, like I said earlier, tends to be the theory that best maps up with superheroes, but I'm sure we could come up with some examples of people who are not so altruistic. Let's go back to that first theory, though, for just a second. The game does say anyone. Anyone could wear the mask, which means technically there could be somebody out there that is a superhero that works under the social exchange theory. Excuse my crude Photoshop skills here. I'm not saying that Batman follows the social exchange theory. In fact, he doesn't. And from what I know of Jeff's thoughts on Batman, he would agree. He wouldn't say that Batman follows the social exchange theory for he's not expecting compensation, right? He doesn't need compensation. He's Bruce Wayne. But there could be a hero out there who would expect payment of some kind, right? That weighs the costs of doing the work to help their city or their neighborhood or whatever and expects some compensation, maybe in terms of money or some sort of reward, recognition, or something along those lines. It's entirely possible. I don't know one off the top of my head. I bet if I asked Jeff, and I will ask Jeff, he could come up with somebody who probably fits in this space. But I think that's just important to consider when we think about the title of the game. Anyone can wear the mask. It could be someone who buys into this theory. So that wraps up our talk about anyone can wear the mask. Be a hero, and be a hero in two ways. First, try and bring more altruism into your life. Be a helper. I think the world generally needs help. We all need help. Everybody needs help at some point in time. You can be that help for somebody even if you're not getting anything out of it, and even if it's not your responsibility to be helping them. The second way you can be a hero is to go buy anyone can wear the mask. It's a fantastic game. Just listen to that actual play from Party of One Pod, and you will absolutely be convinced to buy the game. It's great. Jeff's a wonderful person. Support Jeff. Buy a fantastic game. You'd be a real hero to do so. So, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into another Psych of RPGs episode. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm really enjoying this new format of picking a game and going into that specific game and extracting an idea. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like this new format or if you have any questions about helping people, why we help, or anything like that. You can also reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Gila RPGs. You can also reach out to Jeff or inquire about what Jeff is up to by following at Party of One Pod. That's going to get you Jeff Stormer's Twitter account. Hopefully, like I did with Necronautilus, I'll be able to interview Jeff soon and have a follow-up video where we get to talk about some of the ideas that we talked about here. Otherwise, thank you all so much for your time. Have a wonderful day and go be a hero.